y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and today I have a Bible journal process video for you. I am working through the devotional Perfect Peace. This is a digital devotional available to download over at By the Well for God, so I will definitely link it below. It is a beautiful devotional all about finding peace in God, trusting in God in those times in our lives when it can feel like anxiety might get the best of us. So I'm going to journal in Isaiah 26, specifically verse 26:3. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to do a little bit of mixed media on here, use these beautiful images that come with the devotional. I will put you all on fast forward. As always, I will link everything that I use down below. Otherwise, let's go. The very first thing that I'm going to do is prep my journaling page. I'm using white gesso. I'll make sure to link it below. Normally I use clear, but I happen to have a bunch of white, and because this was such a big open page, I figured white would work well. I usually don't prep my pages in my Bible journal. I don't really mind, but I knew that this was going to be a lot of mixed media, that I wanted to do several different layers with sprays and that they would just go straight through this journaling page. Plus, I do like some of the texture that comes out when you add gesso. So I'm just scraping a pretty thin layer. I will put it aside, let it dry so that it will be ready to take some mixed media in just a moment. While that dries, I'm actually going to work with the devotional. Now, I thought that this was a really awesome opportunity to include the devotional actually on the journaling page. I am pretty much done with this particular illustrating Bible, the spiral bound Bible. I have a new one to start 2021, and so for me it was okay to add some bulk. It's already a super bulky Bible, and I really enjoyed this particular devotional, and so I thought keeping it in the Bible for reference would be a really nice thing to be able to look back on and see what I had gotten from that devotional. So I have trimmed it down, and now I'm going to mount it on some scrapbook paper. This is just Felicity Jane scrapbook paper that I had in my stash, and I'm going to use it to make my own little pamphlet. And inside the pamphlet will be the devotional, and I will be able to tuck it in a pocket that I will add to the page. So I've just adhered it there. I'll trim it out and then fold it in half, and I'll have my own little devotional book. It was so exciting to see that By the Well for God had released this digital devotional. It was written by Judy, who is one of the writers that contributes on a regular basis to By the Well for God devotionals. I love her take on things. I love how she always applies it to a real life situation. And her description of feeling anxious and starting to feel those emotions rise up when she had not one but two of her loved ones in surgery at the same time is something I feel like we can all identify with. We all have feelings of anxiety, and sometimes those emotions can come about and it feels like we can't control them. And she talked about the very practical advice of how she just turned to Isaiah 26:3, where it says, "You will keep the mind that is dependent on you in perfect peace, for it is trusting in you." And how the structure of that verse kind of goes front to back. And when we put our trust in God, that helps keep our mind on God. And when we have our mind on God, then He will provide that peace. And so she mentioned that that's what she leans on. And that is something that I have definitely been leaning on recently. And so it was nice to see another really practical example of how that can work in your life. You can see that I have one of the other cutouts that has the definition of peace that I have matted on a couple different layers of scrapbook paper here. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, and I'm adding a little zigzag stitch around the edge for some detail. This is a paper bow. It was on a paper clip, and I am taking it off, and I will just add it on as decoration for the front of this devotional. I'm trying to figure out, so it's a little bit big and it hangs off the side. So what I'm going to do is trim it down just a bit, and in the end I realized that it doesn't actually really matter if it hangs off the side. It's just a little pamphlet for the front, and I really like how it defines peace right here and kind of gives you a focus for where you're going inside that devotional. I'm going to rough up the edges to add a little bit more texture, just using the sides of my scissors. There's definitely a Tim Holtz tool that will distress the edges of your paper. My scissors seem to work just fine though. So adding a little texture, I will adhere it on to the front of the pamphlet and then add the bow just for fun, just for an extra little pop. I always forget to use these bows, and I have way too many ribbon tabs going on in my Bible journal. It is crazy at the top of it. So I'm glad I remembered to grab this, and I just took off the paper clip, and I have this really cute little bow, adding it with adhesive foam dots in 3 different spots so it stays nice and secure, and the front of that little pamphlet is done. All right, time to get going with some mixed media. I am spraying inside a Felicity Jane box because I have found that it really keeps my sprays contained to keep my work area clean. I am using a couple different sprays. I have the Distress Oxide Spray and Worn Lipstick, and then I have 2 different colors of the Dina Wakley Acrylic Gloss Sprays. I like mixing them together. It did kind of pool up because of the gesso underneath, so I'm just using a paper towel to dab up some of the excess. And the pink was a lot, so I'm going back over with the blue just to tone it down a bit. It looks like a hot mess right now, and mixed media always will look like a hot mess at some point, and that's kind of a sign that you're doing it right. To tone it down even more, I have the snowflake stencil. I believe it's from the Crafters Workshop, and I am dabbing on acrylic paint through the stencil to add a few snowflakes in the background. And for me, the reason I did mixed media on the background is because I knew I wanted to use the church element that came in the set. And I wanted the mixed media to kind of represent the craziness that goes on in the world, the absolute, disarray of how things can feel, and the messiness of what our world really is like. And then the peace that you can find in a church, in prayer, in studying your Bible. And so I wanted the contrast of the cleanness of the church and how the pocket was going to look, and then the chaos of what was happening behind it. And I really think it came across pretty effectively. I like how it turned out. It's been a while since I've used mixed media in my journaling, and I forgot just how much fun it is to get your hands messy and to really get in there with lots of different elements and layers and see what happens, because mixed media is a lot of times out of your control. Okay, I put that aside to dry. You cannot use your heat tool with the Dina Wakley gloss sprays because they will burn and they will do weird things. Not good things happen. So try not to use your heat tool on those. It's really hard to be patient, but I just put it aside, and that's when I decided to do all the fussy cutting that I was planning. So again, like I said, I love this illustration of the church and the little landscape that was going to be on. I cut out a couple of the trees, and I just wanted to create kind of this serene feeling. And for me, it's a feeling I definitely get at times when I go to church and when I'm with my church family, and the just feeling of peace that God can provide us in the midst of a chaotic world. And I like I said, the contrast between the two. At first I thought I was going to use this bench, and I did cut it out, but it ended up not really working in the spacing of where I had everything on the page. So I'll just have to save it and use it for another journaling entry later on. All right, once all of those are cut out, then it's time to bring back in the journaling page, and I am going to create a pocket where my pamphlet is going to live. And I'm going to use just the spare paper, again from Felicity Jane. I'm a subscriber to theirs, so I have a lot of the paper laying around, and it's just beautiful, really neutral paper. I'm going to add some stitching detail to the paper and then use my tape runner on 3 of the sides to make it work like a pocket. So I'll adhere that to the bottom. In Isaiah, in this particular section, there is a ton of room in the margin, so I was able to create such a large pocket. Just fantastic. I really, really like the size of this Bible. I cannot wait to start my new one. Now I am going to just set the scene. So I have the landscape in the background that I will trim down so that it fits within the realm of the pocket, and then I will nestle my church and the trees on top of it to create this kind of serene scene, very peaceful against the chaotic background of what is happening. And like I said, this is just such a wonderful devotional, one that you can come back to over and over again at different times when you are not feeling peaceful, when you feel some turmoil going on. It has you kind of determine what are some of your triggers, what is causing anxiety to build up in you, and how can you prepare yourself through prayer, through study, to deal with those when they come up. And I think that's a really important thing to identify and know in advance, so that you can kind of see those issues coming up. You can see the bench just wasn't really working as far as size, so I decide what I want to do is add a little bit more lettering, and so I will quickly trim out perfect piece. I think that I'm going to put it there by the side of the devotional, but I actually end up nestling it in on that scene. And I have just sped up my fussy cutting a whole bunch so that you guys didn't have to watch me do a ton of fussy cutting. But you can see that I'm keeping my scissors straight. Some people ask me how I'm able to fussy cut certain things, and keep your scissors straight and turn the paper. That's one of the tips that we learned like way back in elementary school. I remember my art teacher teaching me in elementary school to keep your scissors straight, turn the paper, and of course we forget it. And sometimes we think, well, if I just turn my scissors, I'll be able to get it. And truthfully, it's all about turning the paper. That is going to give you the best results. I actually start using a tape runner on this, but I tear it on accident. So I opt for a glue stick, this really fine tip glue stick, and that will work just fine. I'll just piece those two pieces back together. No one will know the difference except for all of you that are watching this video. Just adding a little bit of glue here and there at the edges. And I think that is the perfect title for this page. Perfect piece. And I decide to go ahead in just a moment. I'm going to go through some of the alpha tile stickers that I have from By the Well for God. I have quite the collection of all the colors. And because there's some purple coming up in the background because of the blue and the pink mixing, I decided to bring in some purple down here. And so I will add the verse reference, Isaiah 23:6. And that will be the end of this page. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting that like button and that subscribe button. I will definitely list all the supplies down below. Head over to By the Well for God and pick up this sweet devotional. You won't regret it. It's a perfect way to spend an afternoon journaling. I hope that you have a fabulous day, and as always, keep it creative.